And we're live. We're live. Back in Austin. What a day. We're pumping.
Well, I'm not in Austin.
No,
but Marty is.
You're not. I can't even talk right now. Yesterday was a 20-hour day for me.
I'm in an Airbnb closet. It's like the poor man's Jack Mallers background.
Yeah, it doesn't look like there's a lot of depth to that closet. Jack definitely has a lot more depth, more room to walk around.
His closet is much larger. Shows nicer on screen.
Yeah. How have your travels been? You've been on the road.
Travel's been good. While you were with Trump in Pubkey, I was in a hot springs. My son's first hot springs. It's like the most opposite. I feel like it could be like the most opposite situation.
Yeah. Should we just open up with Pubkey?
I think I put it on the top of the list.
You got Powell first, but we'll push Jerome down to number 2.
Powell's pumping the coin.
He is pumping the coin. 50 bip cut. We'll get to that.
First cut in 4 years.
First cut in 4 years. 50-50, 25 bip, 50 bip going into the FOMC meeting yesterday. They went with the higher cut. We'll talk about what that means in a bit. But first, the big event of yesterday was Donald Trump making a pit stop on the road to Long Island for his campaign event last night at Pubkey, Bitcoin's third place in New York City. I was there. It was surreal. It was a long day. I left Austin at 3:30 a.m. for the airport, or woke up at 3:30, left for the airport at 4:15, 5:30 flight, New York by 10:30. Hung around for about 5 hours. Then Trump showed up. Bought some burgers using Bitcoin. Talked to some press. Talked to some coiners.
Did you have a conversation with the man himself?
Not a conversation, but I got stuffed into the press pin. I used my TFTC and RHR credentials to get in with the press, and the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times and New York Post got their questions in before I could.
You were like doing the screaming thing where they all like scream asking questions?
Yeah. I wasn't really screaming though. I was just there.
Mr. President, over here, look at me.
Yeah. I was right behind them when they were signing memorabilia at the bar, and he was handing out burgers.
Can we play the Fox News clip? I have it in the list.
We can't play whatever is on this Primo link because it's not loading.
Well, Marty, is it on TFTC? You know what I'm talking about, the Fox News clip of the actual transaction of our buddy Drew holding the phone for him and doing the transaction. While Trump is sitting next to him.
Here it is, Logan.
Just going to scan this QR code here with this phone. If you want to take that from him, scan that QR code right here. Take picture. Oh, right there. Right there. Just that one. Select text is difficult.
All right. And fantastic, it went through. Right. I need to refresh the invoice.
You can all imagine that these two are very nervous while this is happening.
Oh, it did go through. All right, we're done.
Perfect.
The first transaction by a president on the Bitcoin protocol. History.
You know what that means? That's history. History of the making. Hello, everybody. I got to go back and see those people.
All right, let's go.
Come on.
Right this way.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
So what's your reaction to the Fed cutting interest rates today?
I guess it shows the economy is very bad to cut it by that much. Assuming they're not just playing politics, the economy would be very bad, or they're playing politics, one or the other. But it was a big cut.
It was a big cut, Don.
Look, I mean, it's going to go down in history as as a former president of the United States, going to Pubkey and buying burgers with Bitcoin. But and Drew and Thomas are good friends, but like it was first Drew took the phone from him, tried to pay, and then Thomas took the phone from him and tried to pay. Meanwhile, Trump's sitting there like, I have no idea what the fuck's going on, and then they both were surprised separately that the transaction went through, which is like, I mean, you just can't write that script. I feel like that is very Bitcoin.
It's very Bitcoin. As you can imagine, their nerves were they had a lot of nerves. And I think what happened was they like spazzed out and opened the Zaprite invoice early, and so they'd scramble, and it was expired, I believe, and so they'd scramble to create a new invoice, pay it, and then
Thomas was so surprised it went through.
It went through.
He's been in Bitcoin for I think as long as us, if not longer, over a decade. Still surprised when a Bitcoin transaction goes through.
It worked. We battle tested it for many hours leading up their node, their implementation. It was great though. It was cool to see Trump in that environment. Like coming to a dive bar after 2 assassination attempts in the middle of the city and actually talking to people. He's very personable.
Well, I mean, so when the second assassination attempt happened, I was like, when did it happen?
I think on like
Friday
Sunday or Monday. No, I think it was over the weekend at some point.
I was like, okay, well, that's obviously like we're gonna have to talk about that on our Rabbit Hole Recap. It's gonna be like the main topic. Then Trump, like within like 10 hours, decided that like his priority was to shill his new shitcoin on Twitter. And then he goes to Pubkey. And at this point, does anyone even remember the assassination attempt happened?
I think
so. The second assassination attempt has been memory hold already.
Yeah, it was funny. Frank from Bitcoin Magazine, he was in the press pit with me, actually credentialed. He got a question in. And we're sitting there like 5 minutes before he walks in. The Secret Service is in the bar, and he's like, Marty, I really liked your TFTC episode with John Cullen about the first assassination attempt. I was like, we should not be talking about this right now. Not the place, Frank. Appreciate that you're listening and you love the episode, but not Frank. Doing a great job, actually. I was talking to him quite a bit before the event because he was down in FIDI covering the Samourai case, which we're going to talk about later.
I mean, I have that on the list. Can we just play his full 8 minutes?
Do you want to play full 8 minutes?
I mean, it's just his recap of the case. Like it's solid. Like if we talked about it for 8 minutes, we would talk about it worse than he talked about it.
Sure. Okay. I guess I'll send some emails and we'll listen to Frank's.
Should we play the clip?
Let's play the clip.
I mean, it's probably one of the most important cases in Bitcoin right now.
It definitely is. He's doing a good job covering it. We're lucky to have Frank. 8-minute clip.
Hey everybody, so I'm outside here. I'm outside the courtroom here in the Southern District of New York. I just attended the status conference for the Samourai trial. So bear with me today, there's a little bit to review. So today we had Rodriguez and Lonergan Hill, the defendants in the case. They were both present in the courtroom today. The government addressed the courtroom first, sharing that it had voluminous batches of discovery that it had produced and some that it still will produce. Batch 1 was made available to the defense in mid-June. This featured business records, emails, and social media account information. Batch 2 featured extractions from the devices that have been seized from both Rodriguez and Lonergan Hill. Of the 44 devices seized from Rodriguez, 15 have had info extracted from them. Of the 25 seized from Lonergan Hill, I believe it was, or of the 27, I apologize, that were seized from Lonergan Hill, 25 have been accessed to this date. And then the government said that the third batch of discovery will be coming soon. The government then said that it plans to proceed with the trial. Rodriguez's attorney spoke after that. He said that it was premature to set a trial date. He mentioned also that all of the mid-August discovery has yet to be reviewed, and that thus far no evidence shows that Rodriguez or Hill acted as money transmitters. Lonergan Hill's attorney said that they had received 8 terabytes of discovery from the government. He made a really interesting analogy here. He said, he described what this equates to in terms of information, and he said that this would be about 75% of the Library of Congress, and that if you printed it out, it would go all the way to the moon and back 22 times. So obviously this would take a very long time for them to get through. He also referenced the letter from Senator Lummis and Senator Wyden, a Republican and a Democrat, stating that statute is being used improperly in this case against Rodriguez and Lonergan Hill, and that Samourai has not acted as a money transmitter, or Lonergan Hill and Rodriguez have not acted as money transmitters. He proposed a motion to dismiss a motion to dismiss the case, or at least the charges that they've acted as money transmitters. The judge did not accept this right now, and they scheduled the next hearing for December 17th, 2024 at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. I was very happy to run into Zach Shapiro from the Bitcoin Policy Institute. He was also present in the courtroom. He explained to me that Rodriguez and Lonergan Hill's lawyers proposed to dismiss the money transmission charges because with these charges gone, both sides would have a lot less information to sift through. So the second charge in this case as well is tied to money laundering, and as of right now, there was not necessarily a motion to dismiss that charge made. Something else that Shapiro brought up that I thought was really interesting was he said that the Tornado Cash decision, and please take this with a grain of salt, I'm not 100% sure on all this, but the Tornado Cash decision should be made before the next hearing for this case. So before December 17th, 2024, we should have more information on the Tornado Cash case, which may provide, which may be some sort of legal precedent for this case. From there was a bit of a recess, and the next part of the hearing had to do with bail and the modifications for the bail conditions for Rodriguez. So after a short recess, when we came back to the courtroom, there were the 2 modifications that Rodriguez's lawyer requested was that they remove home detention for Rodriguez, and that also they modify restrictions on transactions and crypto. So basically, something that also Zach Shapiro from BPI explained here for this second one, they're basically, you have Rodriguez requesting to use some of the Bitcoin that was taken in from Samourai. As of right now, that can't be done. So they were trying to have this be the case, and part of the reason was for him to pay his lawyers. Again, that's according to Shapiro. Rodriguez, as a defense attorney, said that the home detention was unduly restrictive and unnecessary, and this came from the pretrial, so the pretrial committee that they've met with, and he argued that Rodriguez is not a risk of flight and he has no intention to flee. He also said that he was not the attorney who met with the magistrate judge who helped to establish these conditions, so Rodriguez was under prior counsel when these conditions were established. Give me a minute, just bear with me here. Lots of notes to sift through as I'm speaking with you. Yes, he continued to make the case that, that Rodriguez is not a risk of flight. He mentioned that his father, I believe, and his wife had signed a bond, a bail bond. Had signed the bail bond. They had also posted property, and that Rodriguez had also surrendered passports. And then, yes, the government, so Rodriguez, opportunities to flee. Again, just bear with me for 1 second. He also pointed out that Rodriguez has had 2 opportunities to flee and hasn't, and he also has continued to appear in court when requested to. So basically, given that Rodriguez has been doing everything the court has requested and hasn't made any attempt to flee, they made the argument that he should be given, that home detention should be removed. As I mentioned, the government came back pretty aggressively at this point and said that the home detention is a necessary condition to ensure that Rodriguez continues to appear in trial. They went really hard at this point. They kind of assumed that a verdict had been made in the case, so they talked about how Samourai had facilitated cryptocurrency money laundering, and that some, they're being charged with crimes that carry a weight of 25 years of sentencing. They said they were knowledgeably, or they were helping to facilitate transactions for legal entities, and then they were providing an anonymizing service for criminals to launder proceeds. Again, none of this has been settled in court, so this was again just the argument, the government essentially making accusations. Things got really interesting in this portion when the government, when the prosecution read aloud some of the notes that they've obtained from pages that they discovered, or that they obtained from a physical notebook that was taken from Rodriguez's house. And on these pages, it included a plan for how he would potentially one day flee law enforcement if need be, getting to a place where it might be difficult to extricate him. So some of the notes on those pages included learning Spanish and having a rucksack that had various passports in it, $10,000 in cash, different clothing, a burner phone, an unused SIM card, various mnemonic phrases to access cryptocurrency / Bitcoin, etc. There were also details about how he would flee on these notes, by air, by sea, getting to a place such as Jamaica, eventually to Cyprus. Rodriguez's defense made a very clear point. He pointed out that actually on the top of this, I believe it said something along the lines of that this was his plan if there were ever a case of a power outage. There was nothing to say that this had been written in response to him, to the charges being, what would be the word here? I apologize, to the charges that have been brought against him in this case. What else do we have here? Give me one moment. Yeah, so the government was a bit sarcastic in response to the defense attorney speaking up on behalf of Rodriguez. They said something along the lines of, that was actually a pretty good plan, and they made the argument that they can't stop monitoring him, and that it's the fact that they want to continue monitoring him and having him under house arrest is just a necessary requirement at this point. While the judge did point out that they were making a lot of accusations, or essentially saying that Rodriguez and was guilty of some of the things already without any sort of verdict being made in this case, he did say that he's not allowing for any sort of modifications right now on the bail. So as of right now, Rodriguez will remain under house arrest, and he will also not be able to access the funds. That actually wasn't addressed directly. There was no so only the first point that was brought up by Rodriguez's defense was actually referenced. So this idea of removing the home detention, there was no discussion of the modification of restrictions on the crypto that he has the keys to. So again, to recap, the case will continue on December 17th, 2024. The bail conditions will remain the same for Rodriguez. I believe that will be the same for Lonergan Hill as well. The bail conditions were not discussed in any sort of detail. And that is all I have for you for today. I'm going to go home and work on a written recap of all this. We'll talk soon.
So that was Frank Corva of Bitcoin Magazine. He's doing some of the best journalism in the space right now. You can support him directly. He's on Nostr. You can zap him if you appreciate his work. If you want to support the Samourai Legal Defense Fund, you can do that at p2prights.org if you want to financially support them. And yeah, I think he did a really great job updating us all on the case, and I think he did a better job than either of us could have done.
Yeah, we weren't there, so we couldn't have given a recap like that. Frank was there. He will continue to be there, from what I understand. So December 17th is the next hearing. An official trial has not been set yet. So I think we have one more hearing, then potential trial or settlement, depending on what happens. But yeah, go support Frank and the Samurai Defense Fund. And yeah, it's crazy. This is all happening in New York. You have this crazy juxtaposition of this trial and Trump using Bitcoin, or Drew spending Bitcoin on behalf of Trump to buy
observing burgers. Bitcoin usage in a Bitcoin bar.
Yeah, it's crazy. It does feel like we're at this inflection point. And if you guys haven't listened to it yet, I think it dropped yesterday. The episode I did with OpenState, who's an anon who works for a government. I don't know where, but somewhere in the world.
Is he Nostr only?
I think yes, he's Nostr only. So
Look at
OPN
All
OPN
in
state.
Nostr.
Yes.
It's 2 episodes ago that dropped on Tuesday.
Oh, that dropped on Tuesday. Excuse me.
Good thing we have Logan here.
And no, that was some crazy insight into the world of the Financial Action Task Force and the supranational regulatory body filled with unelected bureaucrats that set these guidelines and really put these onerous KYC, AML, money transmitter business compliance rules on financial institutions globally. And he really dug into just how little countries and financial institutions push back. They're just like, all right, this is it. And they do their best to make sure they check every box. And want to get a peek into the Borg, I would listen to that episode.
I think, look, this is all incredibly fucked up. The Samourai developers, they first of all, they were developers of open source self-custody software. Second of all, they attempted to follow every letter of the law, to the point where they even submitted a legal brief to FinCEN before they were ever arrested, arguing their points. And I think Lola of The Rage, another journalist outfit, focused very much on privacy and freedom in the Bitcoin space. I think it's therage.co. She's working with Janine. Pointed out, Wells Fargo gets hit with similar allegations, and they get a slap on the wrist. But when it's Bitcoiners, or in Tornado Cash's case, when it's Ethereum users, they throw the complete book at them and try and stretch the law to take them down. So it's incredibly important that we keep focus on these cases, that we keep support both financially and emotionally, and that we support the open source developers that consistently push this movement forward. And then last but not least, support the journalists that are actually covering this stuff and keeping us abreast of everything that's happening.
Yeah. Shout out to Frank, shout out to Lola, Janine, everybody who's staying on top of this, because it is easy to, like I said, the juxtaposition of, I want to call it a spectacle. It was a monumental event last night at Pubkey, but you have that celebratory event, and less than a mile and a half away, a day before, you had this trial playing out. And so it's important to make sure that you embrace the wins, but also don't get complacent. Make sure we're supporting the developers like Samourai, because they're building tools that give us financial freedom and the ability to properly secure and send and receive the best money that man has ever created. And as you may be able to tell by the title of this show, the incumbent monetary system is not getting any better. In fact, it's doubling down on soft monetary policy that has created a lot of economic strife and turmoil in our world.
I mean, before we move on to Powell pumping the coin, I saw some questions in the chat. So regarding the spectacle, Trump used Strike to pay the invoice, and Pubkey was using Zapright to receive the payment.
Is Zapright connected to their own LND instance powered by Voltage?
There you go. There's your full breakdown.
Yeah, that was the stack. Interoperable, Strike, Zapright, LND, Voltage. 5 products there. Building the infrastructure to make that possible. Like we said at the end of that Trump clip that we played, he was asked a question about Jerome Powell's rate decision, his lowering of rates yesterday, 50 bips. A month ago, people were pretty certain it was only going to be 25 bips. 50 bip cut would signal that things are not all well throughout the economy. So Trump mentioned that at the end. There's 2 ways to read what happened yesterday. It's either the economy is doing worse than the current administration and Federal Reserve Board is posturing, or the Fed is making a political move to try to boost markets leading into an election, hoping that the incumbent administration will get reelected because Trump has already signaled that he's going to kick Powell out. I happen to believe it's the former. I think the economy is doing way worse than people are projecting. And he even admitted it in his press conference as well, particularly alluding to illegal immigration. Really taking good jobs from Americans and putting the jobs market in a precarious position. And then you just see all the layoffs that are happening across the board, and the fact that people are still complaining about inflation. And I do think the economy is not doing as well as is marketed, which I'm pretty much assume all of you agree with, and we've been talking about for some time.
I mean, first of all, like, this goes towards this idea that like Bitcoin is like quickly becoming this macro asset, this global thermometer of economic flourishing around the world, and is, I'm not going to say completely detached from the cycles we've seen in the past. I think the cycles are still very much in play, but more so attached now to the macro environment. And I mean, it's important to look back here. I mean, if you go back to when they first started raising rates, both me and Marty were incredibly surprised, along with most other people. We didn't really see that coming. I mean, I remember I was trolling Marty for a while. He was like, you said an absolute, like only to speak an absolute, but you like tweeted an absolute, like they will never
go above 2%.
Yeah. And just the fact that Bitcoin's been sitting near all-time highs in that environment is, I think, impressive in itself. But basically the general dynamic here, and I don't pretend to be like, I'm just a humble Bitcoiner. I don't pretend to be like an economic expert, but the general dynamic here is when rates are cut, money becomes cheaper. It's cheaper to borrow money. And it essentially what it does is it inflates asset prices. And when rates are increased, money becomes more expensive, and it's used as like kind of a sledgehammer to try and combat inflation. So the goal here was to try and get inflation under control by raising rates. Powell waited a while to reverse course because he knows that inflation is not under control. He is now kind of basically pretending that inflation is under control, but it's more important for him to pump asset prices to try and stop a global recession. And obviously Bitcoin is the global asset. But it in effect has started to really put gasoline on the fire that is the Bitcoin adoption, but also it has pumped asset prices in the stock market and across traditional asset classes. And the key here is it's not just this, economic literates or whatever like to say basis points, right? 50 basis points. That's 0.5%.
Bips.
It's not just it's not just the market reacting to the 50 bip cut. It's the expectation that this is the reversal of the trend, and instead of continuing to go up or stay flat high, we will start to go down, and they will continue to cut.
Yeah, pull up the chart, Logan. Just pulling up BitBo. And if you look at it, or right around where I think 24 and a half hours post speech, we dumped a little right after the speech, but since then we've pumped 4% to $63,690.
It was like a bunch of people that were high IQ that were like, "Oh, buy the rumor, sell the news," and then they're like, "No, we're reversing here, and Bitcoin's gonna fucking go up."
Yeah, and there was I haven't watched it yet, but I was chatting with somebody who watched JD Vance's interview with Tucker Carlson last night, and apparently I'm going to go watch it after this at some point, but here's the synopsis I got. It was a really interesting interview because he was focusing a lot on the bond market, which makes my friend believe that you could see a situation where Trump wins, the bond market revolts because Trump tries to do tax cuts and to reshore industry, and Trump leans on the Fed to suppress yields through QE and YCC, etc. He's basically saying it without saying it. We're going to need a really smart Treasury Secretary, but really they're going to need is a Fed chairman who's willing to do their political bidding at the expense of the Fed's balance sheet. And so that would also align with comments that Trump is going to kick Jerome Powell out and get a friendly in if he gets reelected.
I mean, I think whoever gets elected, they're going to print a shit ton of money. Like their backs are against the wall. There's no other option.
Yeah, but the way in which that money printing materializes will be different under the two administrations because they'll have vastly different fiscal policies.
But the end result for Bitcoiners remains the same, which is they're going to inflate the fuck out of the U.S. dollar, and Bitcoin is uninflatable, and it's fixed and scarce, and so the price of it in the shitty currency in dollars should increase. I mean, you also have to look at just like sovereign debt, right? Like I think we're over $35 trillion now. Mm-hmm. And we're in that unique privileged position where we effectively get to establish the interest rate that we pay for our own debt payments. Like if you get into debt with your credit card, like Amex or Visa chooses whatever rate you have to pay back your debt. We are in that privileged position where we effectively get to do that. And in a high rate environment, that just really gets expensive.
Yeah. It's not good. I mean, we this is the end state of this fiat monetary system. There is no other way out of it. There's so much leverage that has built up in the system. As Parker Lewis likes to say, there's too much debt, not enough dollars. There's debt everywhere you look, whether that's in real estate markets, treasury debt, commercial real estate. The debt is going up significantly, credit card rates, and overall credit card debt is up. And the system is eventually going to need to be flooded with an obscene amount of dollars to attempt to pay back that debt, and that's going to have inflationary effects. So hope you guys enjoyed the 1.5, 2 year high interest rate environment, which tried to bring inflation down, didn't do a great job of it. Inflation is likely right around the corner again here in the United States.
Yeah,
so
it never left, Marty.
It never left. I mean, higher inflation.
Yeah, mandibles and bit.
Yeah. All right, let's get back to the list. What do we have next?
We've been on the list the whole time.
I know.
It's great. Strong list. The next is the Kingdom of Bhutan stacking a shit ton of coin.
Absolute chat. Let's give it up. Let's give a clap for the Kingdom of Bhutan, a small, humble country in the Himalayas, just aping into Bitcoin. Obviously, we've been talking about this, I think, for the better part of 2 years now, because the market became aware that the Kingdom of Bhutan was stacking Bitcoin via Bitcoin mining operations and other capital allocation strategies from their sovereign wealth fund, due to the fact that they got caught up in Celsius and BlockFi bankruptcy proceedings, and so they got doxxed in those proceedings. And now the Kingdom of Bhutan's leaned in. They've said, hey, yeah, we like Bitcoin. We like the coin. We like to farm the corn. They expanded their mining operations, and now it looks like they're being more transparent with that. And
I don't think they are being more transparent with that. I think this company doxed them.
No, I think Druck Holdings filed it.
Did they actually file?
Yeah, Bhutan is the fourth largest government with Bitcoin holdings on our platform, with 750 million in Bitcoin. Unlike most governments, Bhutan's Bitcoin does not come from law enforcement asset seizures, but from Bitcoin mining operations, which have ramped up dramatically since early 2023, said the surveillance firm. Oh, surveillance firm. They got doxxed.
This is Arkham Intelligence, which is the surveillance firm that uses shitcoins to pay people to rat out addresses. But I mean, people were talking about it, so it's already public information. I felt like it was necessary to talk about it. What I find most interesting and fascinating here is this is the first country that we know of, it's the second country that we know of, besides El Salvador, that is stacking Bitcoin directly rather than seizing it from their citizens. So in this situation, people keep the headline keeps being that they're the third largest sovereign holder of Bitcoin, but they're actually the first if you exclude seized Bitcoin. Like everyone has U.S. as number one, but that was all stolen Bitcoin. Bhutan actually put in the proof of work to stack the coin themselves.
Quite literally, proof of work. And this is, I mean, this is a small nation of less than 1 million people, I believe, the King of Bhutan.
Yeah, but this goes partially to like the thesis that the challenger states, the challenger companies, the challenger individuals are the first movers on Bitcoin, and this idea that like the ones that are smaller and more nimble are able to like jump off the cliff and take that risk, right? I mean, I believe they are a dictatorship or a kingdom or whatever you want to call it.
Monarchy.
So like presumably like 6 people in a room got to make this decision secretly, which is obviously much more difficult for a large bureaucratic democracy.
Yeah, King of Bhutan, population 782,455 as of 2022. It's a Buddhist kingdom on the Himalayas' eastern edge. It's known for its monasteries, fortresses. So the Buddhists are getting in.
Yeah, like they're big,
in.
beautiful monasteries there. It's supposedly a beautiful country, and they have a lot of energy. And historically, they've exported that energy, but they actually make way more money. And if they just mine Bitcoin with it, and they believe in Bitcoin and they're holding it long term. Pretty cool.
I did that wrong.
What?
A second here. I'm trying to do how much Bitcoin they have per citizen.
It's a simple division.
I know, I did the wrong. I had the denominator. That's 1.6 million sats per citizen that the Kingdom of Bhutan has acquired so far. And they're expanding their mining operations with BitDeer, so you can imagine, like, for a sovereign wealth fund to have that much Bitcoin per citizen, like, that's pretty significant. If you play it out, hyper Bitcoinization, like, that is, instead of what we have here in the United States when you
How many is it per citizen?
What was that?
How many is it per citizen?
1.6 million sats.
That's impressive.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Here in the United States, we have something like $250,000 of debt per individual. If you factor in the on-balance sheet and off-balance sheet debt, looks like Bhutan's going the other way. What do we think the Buddhists are going to do with their corn? Going to hold it, sit happy, knowing that they're financially secure.
They're going to become one of the wealthiest nations in the world.
Isn't that insane?
And the world is their playground after that. So actually, they're saying they're the 4th largest government. Who's the top 3? They have a list here. This is like really horribly formatted.
Yeah, it is not.
They said they were the 3rd largest government, but this says they're 4th. But anyway, they are the largest that actually stacked rather than stole, which I feel like is an incredibly important caveat to put out there, because we should not be encouraging nations to steal Bitcoin from their so-called citizens that they're treating like subjects, to the point where I've said this in the past, and I feel like it's a very relevant time to say it now. The one piece of legislation in the U.S. that I would wholeheartedly throw my support behind on the Bitcoin side is that if the U.S. government seizes Bitcoin, they should have to burn it, because they can provably burn it. They should have to burn it by law, and remove that incentive, because as Bitcoin adoption increases, that incentive gets stronger and stronger.
Rodolfo, you need to update your BitcoinTreasuries.net, because you only have 621 Bitcoin in the Kingdom of Bhutan.
Well, what does he have for the top 3? That kind of answers it for us.
Be United States, China, the UK, then Ukraine, even with the addition of the update to Bhutan's holdings, would still be 4th, and then Bhutan would be 5th in front of
Well,
El
he probably didn't
Salvador.
update the UK.
Ukraine or UK?
Yeah, he probably didn't update one of them. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Those are, I guess, is the Ukraine isn't actually seized Bitcoin, right?
I don't know.
Was it done?
I don't know.
I have no idea. Anyway, number one stack sovereign is Bhutan. They have the title.
Shout out to Bhutan. And I mean, this is the game theory. Like, this gets out there. How many other small countries throughout the world say, hey, I see what you've done for Bhutan. I want that. I want my citizens to have 1.6 million sats.
We have David Humphrey in the YouTube chat. It's USA 1, China 2, Russia 3, and then Bhutan 4. But once again, actually, I mean, Russia might have actually stacked a bunch of Bitcoin directly, and we don't know about it. But
yeah,
Putin would hold that close to chest.
Yeah. Game theory is playing out. Countries are stacking Bitcoin. Corporate treasuries are beginning to be filled up with Bitcoin.
David Humphrey is also encouraging us to go visit Bhutan. A trip to Bhutan would change Matt's life.
You think Matt needs the
he
serenity?
Said Mart's life. Mart's life. I guess that's the combination. It's the two of us together.
Mart?
Yeah. It's MART''S. It's both of us combined for convenience. And also, guys, I just want to remind you that we have the Ride or Die Nostr live chat at rhr.tv/stream. Yeah. Also, Tinsley in the Nostr comments wanted me to remind you that. She did it in a little bit less polite way.
Yeah, people are saying, what about Saudi Arabia? I bet they have some. Surprised Saudi Arabia has not joined yet. Spending a fortune on sports instead. Sick in my head.
A bunch of these countries are trying to keep it secret, and this like narc shitcoin surveillance firm is going to try and dox them. So we'll see who's next. You know, this is why OPSEC's important. You don't want to you don't want to tip the hand of everyone you're competing with that you're stacking the coin.
No, you don't. Keep it on the DL. Human Rights Foundation, Bitcoin Development Fund, grants 10 Bitcoin to 20 projects worldwide. In the press release, it said 10 Bitcoin worth $580,000. But now that 10 Bitcoin is worth $630,000. It's a beautiful thing to see. African Bitcoiners, Stratosphere, Coracle, Harbor, the 256 Foundation, Kiveclair, Jeff Gardner, Silentium, BTC Shul, Eda Wallet, Tor Relay Operator Associations, Ricto Jonkti, Yes Bitcoin Haiti, Bitcoin Indonesia, Bitcoin Plus Plus, TabConf, Baltic Honey Badger, LibitConf, and Decentralize, SatsConf, and Solidarity Summit. So these are all people throwing events catered towards educating people about Bitcoin. So this is great to see.
Awesome.
Go check it out.
I just I found out from Sir Sleepy in the Nostr live chat that Nostrville 2.0 is going to happen at Bitcoin Park on November 6th. That's actually community organized. Both Island and Mads came to me and was like, we need to do another version of Nostrville for this year. And I was like, I'm incredibly busy. Be the change you want to see in the world. And they made it happen. So shout out them.
Shout out to them.
Should be a great time.
Taking agency. All right. The rest of the list is like grants and stuff. I noticed you don't have it on the list, but I think we should talk about it.
What?
The pager bombs. That's fucking insane.
Oh, shit. Yeah. Good point. It is massive.
It is. So I'm sure most of you are aware, but earlier this week, the Israeli military executed an attack on Hezbollah members in Lebanon
I mean, it was definitely them. But...
I mean, I think they've taken credit for it, too.
No, they haven't.
No?
They haven't. It's like a little green men situation. They're just... Okay. No comment. They're like, no comment.
No comment. So, yeah. I mean, this is an insane escalation and precedent I don't think should be taken lightly. So it was a supply chain attack, but from what I understand now, after doing some research this morning, like they own the whole supply chain. They set up like a fake beeper manufacturer and somehow
in like Hungary or something, right?
Yeah, convinced Hezbollah to be their their client, and they loaded the pagers up with lithium-ion batteries and some explosive material that would detonate once the batteries got to a certain heat. You have to imagine that these pagers also had backdoor software that would allow the Israeli intelligence, Israeli military, the green men, whoever hit the button to.
I mean, it was definitely Israel.
Yeah, to attack these guys, and like so, you had, I believe, more than 2,000 Hezbollah members with these pagers, which were supposed to be encrypted, and only for Hezbollah members to communicate between each other.
I feel like it's important that they switched to pagers because they were being targeted using their cell phones, and so they were like, okay, we'll go to pagers, and then the pagers were intercepted, or like this whole shell company was set up.
Yeah, and Tuesday morning, U.S. time, the Israelis hit the button that turned the heat on the batteries up, and the explosive material.
First, it sent a message so that they would check it,
mm-hmm.
and then immediately, then it exploded.
Yeah. So this led to thousands of injuries, many deaths, and a new precedent for wartime tactics, which I don't think is a good precedent to set, personally.
Wait, before we get there, then it seems that they switched to walkie-talkies, and then they blew up the walkie-talkies. And then, like, aren't there reports that they blew up a bunch of other stuff too, like
solar farms
and stuff?
Yeah.
Well, they were like home solar chargers, right? It was like if you're off grid, because I assume they don't have good infrastructure in Lebanon.
Yeah.
They blew up a bunch of stuff, other stuff too. So presumably they infected those supply chains as well.
Yeah. Yeah. The Internet of Things, is it a good idea? What can be done with this? That's my question.
I mean, what could be done with the Neuralink?
Right? You're going to chip your brain? No, in all seriousness, though, I mean, this is another chapter in 21st century warfare that highlights that the asymmetry of attacks is really changing in real time. I mean, we've seen, particularly with Ukraine and Russia, the war going on there, how drones are being used to $20 drones are having bombs strapped to them and being used in the battlefield. I saw a drone, Ukrainian operated drone in Russia with thermite flamethrower on it, just setting forest on fire up there. And now we have this pager situation and everything else that happened since Tuesday in Lebanon with the Israelis. And it's really highlighting that warfare in the 21st century is completely different. You don't need as much money to wage an attack. We've seen the Houthi rebels destroy tens of millions, billions of dollars worth of equipment in the Suez Canal with very cheap drones. And now we have these remote attacks on everyday handheld devices that have been proven possible. Who knows how possible they are without owning the supply chain and putting explosive material on it. Like, I'm very interested to learn what is up with the walkie-talkies in the solar infrastructure, particularly because if they don't
natively have like the communication element in them. So maybe they put a remote in it as well. I don't know. I assume more information will come out. I see Lucas in the YouTube comments mentioning that innocent people were injured and killed, including children. Yeah, that is fucking horrible. And to be expected in this type of attack. I mean, who knows who's holding the pager or who's holding the walkie-talkie or whatnot, or if it's sitting on a desk or something like that. But I mean, I would, first of all, two interesting books that I think people should consider reading is Damon by Daniel Suarez and Kill Decision by Daniel Suarez. He goes through a lot of these different changes in the world and in warfare, but from like a story fictional kind of point of view, which I find easier to read than nonfiction stuff. But it can kind of put you in the perspective of the new paradigm that we're going into. I think Marty correctly highlighted in his bent that from a Bitcoiner point of view, supply chain attacks is something that has been considered for a long time as a threat vector. And this should definitely highlight that risk even more so to people. I mean, manufacturers like Coldcard have taken that as a priority from the very beginning, from the clear case to the bags with the numbers on them and the different techniques that they use to try and mitigate supply chain attacks. I think Marty also made a good point about using multisig and using different signers for that multisig to try and mitigate those situations. But there's really no way to sugarcoat it. Like the world is going to be a scarier place. I don't think people realize how vulnerable the increasing digitization of the world and how we did it in such a closed source way has made everyday people and nation states. I mean, just another simple one is like off-the-shelf autonomous drones, where you could set them off on someone and no one could easily trace back who sent them because they're just completely off the shelf. So like these are just things. I mean, I'm be aware freaks, I guess, but that seems fucked up to say. But these are things that everyone needs to be considering, particularly if you are raising a family and thinking long term.
Yeah. No, like I said, I mean, this is a very dangerous precedent that was set because regardless of what side of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict you're on, I think it's easy to recognize that this is a bad precedent because if you can do it, and at the very least, you make other people aware that this type of attack is possible. And then since you had the precedent of it being levied, it's on the table now. Like it is, all is fair in love and war, and now that attack has been thrust into our reality, it is hard to believe that others are going to see that and try to do similar things. And so, like Matt said, no way to sugarcoat it. The world is likely going to be scarier and just be hyper conscious of your devices. I mean, that was a weird thing. Like it's going to change airfare. Like, imagine if this happened on a plane. Like,
no, fuck that shit. That was some Weinstein psyop bullshit. Like the TSA,
why do you say that?
The TSA should be abolished. The TSA
it should be abolished. Agreed.
Do not use this as an excuse to make the TSA even more of a cattle tagging bullshit organization, because they're not going to be able to stop shit anyway. Like if you wanted to stop September 11th, regardless, if you think it's an inside job, that's a whole different story. But if you believe the exact narrative, which is that they use box cutters to take over planes, like all you had to do was reinforce the fucking cockpit door. That would stop them from ever taking over another plane again. We didn't need the whole TSA apparatus. It's completely ineffective. It's designed to just make us treated like cattle. And Weinstein, meanwhile, is flying private all around the world, and he's encouraging people to ramp up TSA shit to try and protect against shit like this. Fuck that, dude.
I completely agree. I don't want to ramp up TSA, but wanted to bring up, like, imagine this happened on a plane. Like we saw it with Pablo Escobar and the cocaine wars in the 80s. Like that was a big attack vector, was bombing planes, and you don't need the TSA. Don't need to beef up TSA. They have bomb sniffing dogs already. Like they would be able to.
No, it's completely ineffective. The TSA is completely ineffective. It's not.
I agree. I don't want you to make me out to be like a TSA stan. I'm trying to get.
You're being a TSA stan, Marty.
No, there's no way. I did let them pat me down last night, though. I was in a rush. I was like, they were like, you got to pat you down. I was like, fuck it.
It's literally just designed to make us feel like cattle when we travel, and all the rich people fly on fucking private planes and skip that bullshit.
I agree.
Including Weinstein.
All right, I take it back. Brett Weinstein. Gitmo. Be aware. Warfare's changed. Yeah, it does really make you think, like, what could they do with this? Next up, First, Maelstrom Bitcoin developer grant awarded to Arcrux. I've been aware of Arcrux. Arthur Hayes' Maelstrom family office granted its first Bitcoin developer award to Arcrux, enabling him to work full-time on Bitcoin Core open source contributions. He's an experienced software engineer, started reviewing pull requests in March 2024. He's also a recent graduate of Chaincode Labs' FOSS program. The grant allows him to leave his job to focus solely on Bitcoin development. As a relatively new developer on Bitcoin Core, Arcrux is a representation of that objective. We look forward to identifying more grant candidates that will be instrumental in strengthening the Bitcoin ecosystem, said Arthur Hayes. And then Arcrux said, quitting my job as software developer and focusing on open source Bitcoin development was a difficult decision for me. The financial support in the form of this grant from Maelstrom has made this possible. I'm excited to step into this role and eager to advance Bitcoin Core development. So this is great to see.
Really
Shout out
great.
to Arthur.
Seems well deserved.
Arthur Hayes giving back.
I mean,
I
love
love
him.
BitMEX,
BitMEX.
Arthur Hayes focused on Bitcoin stuff. BitMEX, multisig, doing it the right way.
BitMEX was always good about supporting open source developers, particularly in a world where there wasn't that much support. There's a lot more support today than there was then, and they really stood the fuck up.
They really did. But this is my favorite Arthur, just like focused on Bitcoin, pushing it forward. DJ, and I'm not going to fault him for degen trading. He's a degen trader, but like trying to pump the coins. Just make Bitcoin better. OpenSats grants long-term support for WireGuard creator Jason Donenfeld.
This one I'm really proud of. This dude is an absolute fucking legend.
Tell us why.
Well, he created WireGuard, which is a VPN protocol that is absolutely, absolutely needed in this world. It's a huge upgrade over the existing protocols. It's very performant. It works incredibly well, and he's the main guy behind that. So that's pretty awesome. And then second of all, he's the main guy behind the random number generator in Linux, which is key to keeping everything secure. So this guy is an absolute load-bearing individual. Something there's a few people in the world that the open source freedom movement heavily relies on, and he's one of them. And this is exactly why the long-term support OpenSats initiative exists. So it's really great to see.
Shout out to OpenSats. Shout out to Donenfeld. Let's get it done. Look, I'm putting some links in here. We can open them up when I say. We'll go with the first one first and the second one second. But before we do that, we have one more OpenSats grant, long-term support for Mike Dilger.
Yeah, I mean, Mike is a legend in his own right on the Nostr side. He's the main developer of the Gossip Nostr client, which for Bitcoiners, I like to compare it to Sparrow. It's just a incredibly hardcore freedom first Nostr client that you can run on desktop. And if you haven't checked it out, you should check it out. And I'm incredibly proud to support Mike. And then, I mean, on the OpenSats side, just to wrap up on the OpenSats side, for transparency's sake, since there's a lot of fucking drama about this topic, Keith, the lead dev from SeedSigner, has applied to OpenSats in the last few days. I think that the application will be approved. I can't speak for the rest of our board members. It requires a 5 of 9 vote it requires a 5 of 9 review and vote as per our guidelines. But I do expect it to get approved. Per my previous comments, the guy who runs SeedSigner socials can go fuck himself. He's a bad faith actor. I still have respect for the open source contributors that contribute to the project. I would appreciate more if they called him out on his bullshit, because he's usually just whining and causing drama. And one thing that he has been doing a lot lately is bullying one of our board members and calling for them to be removed from the board. And that board member is NVK. And I will just say that NVK has been a fantastic contributor to OpenSats. Like the dude has decades of experience in the open source world. He has a decade of experience in the Bitcoin world. He brings a ton to the table. And I will personally not stand for, people going after our board members individually. That shit's fucked up. And yes, Cold Card has a commercially restricted license, but it had a completely open license until someone took his work, him and Peter's work, and raised VC money off of it pre-product. So it's hard to blame him for that, even though I disagreed with his decision at the time. But he's a dude that I have a ton of respect for. He brings a massive amount of expertise to OpenSats. He's been an amazing board member. And we literally could not do it without him.
Get your shit together, seed signer. Social guy.
Yeah, I think if the social guy actually cares about the project, he'd step down because he's a distraction and he makes the whole project look bad. He hurts his contributors at this point.
You heard it here first. All right, Logan. Before we get to the Human Rights Foundation story of the week, I want to bring in some clips of the week from the great state of California. We're going to open up with Gavin Newsom at a Salesforce conference earlier this week. Decided to sign a few bills into law while on stage. Play the clip.
There are a lot of deepfakes out there. There's not a lot of disclosure. There's not a lot of labeling. So among the many AI bills that are on the desk are 3 specific election-related bills.
Do you want to sign some laws?
I just thought, why waste your time with a politician unless they're going to do something for you? There's
2 are signed, and 3 are signed.
And this is now official. That is now injunctive relief if you do any of those deepfake election misrepresentations. So that's how easy it is to govern in California. There are a lot of deep.
So, Gavin Newsom, what I want to point out in this clip is not the bills that Gavin Newsom signed, which are completely against the First Amendment, whether it's AI deepfakes or political cartoons.
Specifically the parody clause.
Yeah. Like in newspapers, like political cartoons, political satire is free speech. Like you can't just say that you can't make AI deepfakes because it makes fun of politicians. And Midjourney's been terrible about this. Fuck you, Midjourney, for not allowing me
they
to
do it at like the protocol level, right? Like at the app
if you type the word Kamala, Donald, JD, Biden, they're like, no, we're not going to make we're not going to allow you to push that palm through and you get a little strike. But this is insane. And it's objectively insane. I think anybody who understands the importance of free speech can recognize that the laws that Gavin Newsom just signed are unconstitutional. What I want to call out is the clapping seals in the crowd, the people that were openly just like applauding him for taking away their ability to speak freely with political speech in the form of AI generated parody ads of politicians. It's pretty insane.
I agree. But actually kind of, so Elon, to his credit, has used this as a rallying cry for free speech. And there's like a specific Kamala video that is kind of fucking hilarious. That is obviously a parody that he effectively made go viral after the vote happened. Not the vote, after the signing happened. I don't even know how California politics works. But they are very full of themselves. That's why like all your shit has like a little label on it that says like, in the state of California, this causes cancer. Because like their laws are the laws of the world. Like most of us don't live in California. It's completely irrelevant. But to Elon's credit, he did do that. To 2 previous stories, Marty, I really wanted to bring this up, and then we just had so much to talk about in the beginning. So with the Trump assassination attempt.
Oh yeah.
Like Elon's your boy. Like why did he delete the guy's account? Why did he force everyone to use screenshots to try and sleuth like his connections and his motives and whatnot? Like isn't that incredibly fucked up?
I have no idea. That is incredibly fucked up. I didn't know that happened.
I think that's a perfect example of Nostr fixing something. It's like Nostr, you'd have all these signed messages. There'd be many, many copies of these signed messages that we know haven't been changed, that you can do independent analysis on, that Elon couldn't just like immediately delete. But yeah, I think Nostr fixes this situation as well. If they start putting more pressure on Elon, which is to be expected. I mean, I think even Elon expects it. He had a tweet out this week that was like, if Harris and Walls win, the first thing they're going to do is pressure X and try and put me in jail, which I think is probably a little bit extreme considering the administration is currently in the White House right now, and they could, if they were going to do it, they could do it right now too. But they will pressure him more. And then, I mean, could Tesla get turned into bombs? Could, internet connected massive lithium batteries that are driving around with cameras all over them and tracking devices get blown up?
Yeah.
Those are my 3 Elon callbacks.
It's not hard to imagine. I mean, do you guys remember Michael Hastings, the BuzzFeed reporter?
He got killed.
They hacked into his Mercedes and ran that dude into a wall.
I think he had the Snowden leaks before Snowden.
You think so?
And that's why they killed him. That's just
before Greenwald?
Yeah, they tried to stop. I mean, I don't think he got him from Snowden. I think he got it from someone else. But I think that's because if you do the timetable, it's maybe 6 months before Snowden.
But he was reporting on the FBI, and he explicitly told his family the night before they killed him, I'm writing a story on the FBI, and I'm not
brand
suicidal.
new Mercedes, and then they just drove him straight into a fucking. Yeah, Mr. J is saying in Zapstream that it was an internal combustion engine car, but it was a brand new Mercedes that was internet connected, drive-by-wire, and he got into a car accident going 100 miles an hour.
You don't even need to just overheat the lithium-ion battery. You just need to get connected to the car, and you can do whatever you want with it. Yeah. So that's been possible. The FBI, that another one that got memory hold. Michael Hastings. Look it up if you are not aware of.
That was one of the
story.
first ones that opened up my eyes. Was Michael Hastings?
Yeah, the government killed an American citizen for reporting on the FBI.
Yeah,
it's pretty clear. Speaking of government,
this parity law, look, the censorship is going to increase, and it doesn't really matter if you believe Elon cares or not, because he's a single dude, and a single dude is easy to pressure. The richest man in the world is the hardest single dude to pressure, but he's still easy to pressure compared to a protocol that is inherently censorship resistant and not controlled by anyone.
Yeah. And on that note, let's play a little parody. Pull up the Babylon Bee clip. This is great. In response, in case you can't tell, I was up for 20 hours and slept for 6 last night. In response to Gavin Newsom's new law, he dropped a campaign ad.
Hi, I'm Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. This is a message for the people of America, given in my authentically recorded, non-AI voice. Thanks to my leadership over the last several years, California has become a world leader in extremist, left-wing governance. My policies were so effective that almost 1 million people are now fleeing the state every year. We even ran out of U-Hauls. During the COVID pandemic, I locked everyone in their homes and shut down businesses for months. Not the French Laundry, though. That's my favorite restaurant. Last year, I cleaned up the dangerous, messy streets of San Francisco, because Chinese Communist President Xi was coming, and I really wanted to impress him. He's my boss, after all. This year, I signed legislation that allows me to take custody of your kid if you refuse to give him artificial hormones and chop off his genitals. Because if you don't do that, you're a bigot, and bigots shouldn't be allowed to have kids. I've also led the way in green energy by banning all cars that don't run on electricity. Then I banned almost all the electricity. This is smart leadership. On my watch, the cost of living and homelessness have skyrocketed. Schools are failing. Drug dealers and human traffickers are pouring across the border. And poop has covered the sidewalks of San Francisco. This is the positive, joyful vision we offer as Democrats. That's why I'm enthusiastically endorsing Kamala Harris for president in 2024. She'll do to the country everything I did in California. Anyway, I'm California Governor Gavin Newsom, and I approve this 100% real message, which is a recording of my voice without the assistance of any AI whatsoever. This isn't a deep fake, and you can rest assured that it isn't, because I just signed an unconstitutional law outlawing deep fakes. No one would dare violate it. Thank you, and science bless America.
Oh my God.
But again, the point of why I wanted to bring that up is the SEALs clapping in the audience. Obviously, who knows if they were just trying to appease the governor because he was speaking at their event. It was a Salesforce event and conference, but like
that was really well done.
Where are we? Like, and that's an example of the type of speech he wants to ban, like obvious political satire that is effective.
Yeah, and it's like particularly malicious because he knows it'll get overturned in courts, but that'll happen after the election.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I think, first of all, Level 99 Slacker in the YouTube comments is saying everyone should have at least one car from the 90s or earlier that is completely disconnected from the internet. Full cosign that. But back on this topic, look, the reality is, like, people are also, I mean, deep fakes are going to become a massive problem. Like,
we've been talking about this for 6 years.
He's not wrong that deep fakes are going to be a problem. You just can't handle it from a regulations point of view. The way you handle that is through something like Nostr and Blossom, where everything is signed and verifiable by the consumer, right? So to the point where if you think something is official communication from a company or an individual or a government, you need to be able to verify that file hasn't been changed and who actually broadcasted it. And you can handle, like, we can handle that through public key cryptography. Like, that's how we handle that. We don't handle that through regulations.
Yeah, agreed. And whether it's this problem with deepfakes or the supply chain issues and the pager bombs that we're talking about, we need more open source hardware,
Everything.
Open source
Cars.
communications, cars, everything. And
yeah, at the core is verifiability. Like, people need to be able to verify things themselves. You can never remove trust completely in most situations, but we can minimize trust. And right now we're living in an incredibly trusted world that does the exact opposite, where we're relying on trusted entities all the time. And we have to cut that reliance. We have to empower individuals so that they can verify things themselves and reduce trust from their lives.
Yeah. Whoo, doggy, beware, freaks. All right, one last
freaks.
One last clip.
One last clip.
This law was put into place because Gavin Newsom is trying to get
this one was good, but the other one's way better.
This is real.
Oh, this is the real one?
This is real.
It was school photo day. You remember what that's like? Going to school on picture day? Who were dressed up in their best, got all ready, knew what they were going to wear the night before, and had to be evacuated. Children. It was...
This woman is drunk. Do you want a wine ant for president? And he wrote the law in because people are making parodies of that was real, but people are making parodies.
I saw
Kamala.
the parody version of that.
Yeah.
It wasn't a version of that. It was something else.
Yeah.
The one that Elon made go viral or whatever. Walker posted it. Guy Swan posted on Nostr.
Yeah, she was talking about how she's unqualified DEI hire, all that.
Yeah.
But I mean, that was a real video, and like the Uniparty is trying to protect this woman that nobody voted for, that they're shuffling in at the last minute, and she's very obviously, in many instances throughout her career, has been
it's
impaired by who knows what it's by, but like impaired drugs, alcohol, stress, whatever. I don't think she's the woman for the job.
I mean, I think it's important that this podcast becomes a politics show leading into the election because then we get more engagement and more numbers. But I mean, I don't think Trump is well qualified for the job either. I think specifically on Bitcoin and some other issues, he might be better for us because he has other focuses, and it'll be a bit chaotic. But I mean, I think Trump can also equally go fuck himself, or maybe not equally. Maybe there's levels.
Definitely not equally. There is levels to this. There's a spectrum, and she's on the very far end of the spectrum. He's definitely.
Where is he on the spectrum, Marty?
He's like in the middle, I think.
I think Trump would throw us in the gulag without even a second thought.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I shook his hand twice last night. I don't think he would.
I don't think
he'd throw me in the gulag.
I don't think he remembers it.
No, I don't. We don't have to get into it. Not a politics podcast.
What about what are your thoughts on the world liberty shitcoin thing he has? Be defined.
It's complete bullshit. Like, what are you doing? The Trump family, like, people are like, oh, you're doing all these scammy business deals, and you're gonna launch a shitcoin like 2 months before the election.
Literally, and like the day. I mean, he's like, so many people hate him on the left. Like, if he loses, like, they will come after us harder because of all this bullshit. You realize that, right?
Yes.
Like, they group us in with the crypto bullshit. They're not going to be like, oh, like, the Bitcoiners were against World Defiance or whatever, World Liberty coin.
Yeah, the terrible timing. I'm just thinking, like, it's terrible look. You're associating with people that run a network called Rug Radio, like an overt insinuation that they're going to dump on retail. Like,
pretty bad.
It's very bad. These crypto scammers, man, they know how to wiggle their way in. Like the fact that he did a Spaces with those. I'm not sure if you listened to any of it, but
I didn't. I know it existed.
Not impressive people.
It's also tiresome. But
it is also tiresome.
To be clear, this is a politics podcast now, so make sure you press like and subscribe, share with your friends and family. Make sure they get triggered. Try and trigger both sides of the aisle as much as possible here in the lead up.
Yeah, and I'm going to ask.
And stay humble, stack sats, opt out and use Bitcoin, other freedom tech.
Yes. As we head into the Human Rights Foundation story of the week, I'm going to ask Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, where are you? This is coming from Nigeria. Which Nigeria is using a Binance employee as a scapegoat for currency crisis. Nigerian officials are using repression to deflect blame for the collapse of their currency, the Naira, by arbitrarily detaining individuals like Binance employee Tigran Gambarian. The regime has charged Gambarian and Binance with tax evasion and money laundering, arguing that Binance is operating virtually. The only thing we have to hold on to is the defendant. The only thing we have to hold on to is the defendant. For 6 months, Gambarian has been unjustly detained without access to proper medical care, a wheelchair, or legal counsel, despite suffering from malaria and a herniated disc. Nigerian officials claim the Binance and digital assets like Bitcoin are responsible for the Naira's decline, arguing they facilitate capital flight out of the local currency, exacerbating its devaluation. In reality, the Naira's money supply growth of 76.4% in the past year, combined with the massive corruption, are the real reasons for their currency collapse. If you want to hear more stories like this and others, go to financialfreedomreport.org and sign up for the weekly newsletter. And yeah, I mean, I think we touched on this story like 2 or 3 weeks ago, but it is insane. Like the Nigerian, it's gone. Yeah. Like, did you see the video of him? Like, they would not even like physically help him walk into court. They gave him like one crutch.
Yeah, it's really fucked up. And to be clear here, for the significance, Nigeria is the largest country in Africa by population, and it's the 7th largest country in the world by population. There's a shit ton of people that live in Nigeria, and the government is cracking down on them like no fucking other. It's insane.
Yeah, and this particular, like, and I may have been coming off facetiously, but like honestly, like this is an American citizen being held hostage by the Nigerian government. Like, I feel like there should be some diplomatic intervention here on behalf of the U.S. government. But yeah, the Nigerian government invited this mid-level Binance employee under the guise of, hey, we need a Binance representative to come to have a conversation to figure out what's going on. And it like gets there, it's like, all right, let's sit at the table and figure out what's going on. They just threw him in a cell and have been treating him like shit for the last 6 months. So they invited him under false pretenses and holding him hostage, essentially, and then trying to blame their terrible monetary policy handling on Binance.
Yeah, they have shitty currency, and they're using Bitcoiners as a scapegoat, which is something that Bitcoiners, when I say we, like Bitcoiners in general, have been concerned about for quite some time. Because I still think, even if you have Trump observing a Bitcoin transaction in a Bitcoin bar in New York, we are a very easily scapegoated minority in this country. It's important that people talk a big game and like we like puff out our chests and we're like, we're huge. Like there's hundreds of millions of us. But I think like push comes to shove, you like hit a mandible situation, which is what Nigeria is in already, right? Like as an American, when I say mandibles, it's more forward looking. But these other countries, there's a bunch of other countries that are already living through mandibles. And one of the easiest scapegoats for them is Bitcoiners. And we're seeing that play out in Nigeria, and it's incredibly scary.
What are you going to make me answer if there's that more?
We don't agree with everything. Marty, I'm fishing for zaps for us. We don't have to agree with everything Binance does to agree that this is incredibly fucked up. So we will also be keeping an eye on this. Marty, they want you to answer. They didn't zap more. We got only 2
I can't answer. I can't answer.
Do you have an opinion on Saylor's take on Safe's podcast about yield, Bitcoin yield?
I do not, because I have not watched it or any of the clips. I heard people or saw people talking about it. I do not have an opinion because I do not know the context of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the general, like the gist of it is that Saylor wants. Ivan gave us another 2.1 thousand sats. Thank you, freaks. Thank you all for zapping us. There's so many people zapping us. It really does keep us going week in and week out. It can get quite exhausting, quite tiresome, and you guys rejuvenate us. Both of the sats, but also with the live chat, just like being in the live chat, being a part of it, showing that you actually find this shit helpful and enjoyable does go a long way. I mean, the general, I didn't watch the whole thing. I have priorities. But the general gist of it is that Saylor, my understanding, and I'll say what my understanding is, and then we can respond to my understanding. And if my understanding's wrong, then you can file away our response as bullshit because we're responding to something that we incorrectly interpreted. Is that Saylor wants to get 5% from JP Morgan on his Bitcoin holdings without converting it to dollars, right? Like right now, if he had them in dollars, they would hold it in treasuries and he would get 5%. Because he's a whale, so he can get the top level rates. But with Bitcoin, he can't do that, and he would like to have his 5% Bitcoin yield. And to a lot of us, especially after what happened last cycle, but we were saying it before what happened to BlockFi and FTX and Celsius and everyone, is where does the yield come from? There's only a scarce amount of Bitcoin. How are they getting this yield? And I think this is just first of all, I think Saylor has historically not appreciated custodial risk. And hopefully he will never learn, for his sake, hopefully he will never learn, why it's important that we constantly say not your keys, not your coins, which is third-party rug risk, that if you're trusting a third party, they're a security hole. That's what we saw happen with BlockFi. That's what we saw happen with FTX. That's what we saw happen to Celsius. And they use the yield as almost like a lobster trap, like come deposit with us and we will give you this free money. And as a result, people are more likely to give up custodianship than they otherwise would. I think so first of all, I think he just doesn't fully appreciate custodial risk. I think second of all, I think he honestly believes that the dollar isn't dying anytime soon. And the yield will come from treasuries. And JP Morgan will just hold treasuries, pay him out a portion of the yield, take their VIG, and not rug him. And I think Safe rightfully believes that we're closer to a Bitcoin standard, where Bitcoin is like this reserve currency, than Saylor does. and it's too risky to trust a custodian to try and get fiat yield in the short term, when you're sitting on, unimaginable wealth in terms of Saylor's holdings, but also in terms of just the random pleb, that has 100 million sats or 120 million sats or 140 million sats. Like people are always discount the true scarcity of Bitcoin. Historically, we've seen that happen time and time again. The best practice, period, is to think long-term, stay humble, stack sats, hold self-custody. If you're not holding self-custody, you're not stacking sats, you're stacking IOUs, you will probably more likely than not get rugged in the future. And then last, just to be, I don't know, a little bit more cross the aisle. Saylor has no children. He has said in the past that he's going to give it to like a blind trust or something for humanity, like his shares of MicroStrategy and his Bitcoin. Like, I don't know what he's going to do with his Bitcoin. I don't know exactly how old he is, but he's not young. Maybe he's willing to take more risks than others. Like, I want to make sure like my grandkids and their grandkids have, Bitcoin to survive. Like that is like my mentality. He doesn't have that mentality, so I don't pretend to understand where he comes from that point of view.
Yeah, the only thing I'll comment on this is, number one, I don't understand that like giving Bitcoin to JP Morgan so that they can give you treasure. Like what are they just like moving something around? Like if you give them Bitcoin, they feel comfortable moving something around their balance sheet and they're willing to give you yield for freeing up some capital for them.
I had Saylor at Bitcoin Park, right? And we had a conversation in front of a live audience. And I think a lot of people thought I think myself personally thought I disagreed with him in significantly in terms of Bitcoin as a transactional currency. And I asked him straight up, I was like, so like you've said in the past that like Bitcoin isn't a transactional currency. Like why do you think that? Like obviously like we use it all the time as a transactional currency. Like it actually is today. It works better than dollars in that regard. Like I don't have to ask permission. It's seamless. And his answer was capital gains tax. It was the tax treatment. So if you look at it from that point of view, right? If you look at it from that point of view, then he wants exposure to U.S. treasuries without selling his Bitcoin and getting hit with the cap gains tax. And he wants JP Morgan to basically handle that for him or whoever. I think he used JP specifically as an example, but any of the big banks or whatever, they handle that situation for him without him having to switch. And then they get a VIG as a result, right? They get their percentage.
Yield. I mean, I'll say a couple of things. Compared to like BlockFi Celsius, it does seem like less risky. Like if you're just giving Bitcoin to free up capital for JP Morgan on their balance sheet to go buy more treasuries and reap that yield and they're spitting it back to you, like I don't think that they're not lending the Bitcoin out to a third party that's taking risk. Okay.
What are they going to do with the Bitcoin? You don't know. You're trusting them, right?
Yeah, no. But like the example that you describe, where it's like you give them Bitcoin, frees up capital to buy treasuries, and then they can take the yield from the treasuries and split it. Like that doesn't seem too bad to me. But yeah, they're lending it out to people. We've seen that time and time again. The counterparties that you're lending this Bitcoin out to typically don't treat it well. And then
traders and short sellers, right?
Yeah, stay humble, stack sats. Like is the 50 to 60% CAGR appreciation in your purchasing power not enough yield for you? I mean, I've always been a believer that on left side of the bell curve, number go up, purchasing power go up. That's good yield for me.
Yeah. What is it? Last decade is 63% year over year.
Yeah.
And like you want like an extra 5%. And then like I hear Dan Held chirping in my ear because he did this all last cycle. Before BlockFi blew up, when he was shilling BlockFi to people, he's like, yeah, but the 5% compounds. You're not accounting appropriately. It's like, I'm not pretending that they're not dangling a sweet carrot in front of your fucking face. I'm saying that you should get your priorities straight and Bitcoin is incredibly scarce, and you should think long term and try and secure as much as possible for your family.
Yeah.
I think he's playing a dangerous game, and that's his right as an individual and as the CEO of the company. I am not a MicroStrategy shareholder. I am not Michael's mother. So I frankly feel like I should not, my opinion on how he decides to conduct his business is completely irrelevant, and he can do whatever the fuck he wants without permission, and that's the whole point. But it could be a very expensive lesson.
Yeah, I'm not a MicroStrategy shareholder. My path to fire, and yeah, stable stack sats, increasing purchase power is good. If you want to take risk with your individual Bitcoin, your company's Bitcoin, go for it. Would not recommend it. I think this is separate from the Bitcoin per share yield. That's actually pretty, for publicly traded companies, like giving Michael Saylor MicroStrategy credit where credit's due. Like, I think they are innovating with their Bitcoin accumulation strategy, and they really leaned into it last week with their latest financials, where they explicitly put the sats per share metric KPI in their financials, and that is going up. And so when it comes to like corporate finance, historically, particularly over the last 15 years, the big move by corporations with large cash balance sheets has been to buy shares back to increase the stock price, lower the denominator of the amount of shares outstanding, and increase the price to make it look better. If you have nothing to do with cash and you want the price to go up of your stock, you just buy back the stock. Saylor, complete opposite direction, where it's like, I'm going to issue more shares via direct equity, like ATM deals or convert deals that increase the number of shares overall, but I'm explicitly going out to market to raise this money to buy more Bitcoin. And if you do the accumulation correctly, even though you're issuing more shares, we believe that we're going towards a Bitcoin standard. And similar to Bhutan having 1.6 million sats per individual in their country, like his goal running a company on a Bitcoin standard should be to increase the amount of sats per share. And he's successfully done that with this strategy. And that's what they came out and marketed. I believe it was over the last 6 months, the Bitcoin per share has increased by 17%, and they're marketing that as Bitcoin yield. Yeah, it's accretive.
No, he and I mean, there's proof of work there. Like, if you hold MicroStrategy shares, like the Bitcoin per share has increased over time. And look, I think this is a unit of account thing, right? Like, everyone should be measuring their opportunity cost in Bitcoin, right? And including individuals. Like,
yeah, but I think this is from what I understand, this is separate from the SAFE conversation, right?
Yes, but here's the thing, Marty, I'm going to connect it back, right? I mean, wearing the 1031 hat, right? Venture fund that we support Bitcoin businesses in the space that are largely private, right? Grid has gone public. Fold is on the verge of going public, but largely private businesses. But a lot of them are also trying to maximize Bitcoin per share. If you are truly trying to maximize that, you shouldn't play games about yield in terms of trying like accruing yield with a custodial product with like a JP Morgan or something.
Agreed. I'm not
in those cases. In those cases, like we actually have skin in the game in those situations, and I would advise those founders not to do it. And they could, obviously they're founders; they can do whatever the fuck they want. I mean, it's their
to be clear,
business.
no founders in the 1031 portfolio are doing any of these
correct
yield chasing.
But like,
things.
But my point is with Saylor, it's like everyone's got an opinion. At the end of the day, like, if you're not a MicroStrategy shareholder, who the fuck gives a shit? And then secondary, if you are a MicroStrategy shareholder, you can sell your shares if you want. Like, you always have that ability, and you can just stay home with stack sats instead. You are taking a relatively similar risk by holding those shares in terms of third-party custodial risk rather than holding Bitcoin. You're trusting that he's going to be a good steward and not rug you or get rugged himself. So be the change you want to see in the world. Focus on yourself.
Nuance to this discussion. I think we all agree. I don't think Saylor should be giving MicroStrategy's Bitcoin to JP Morgan to get yield on that Bitcoin. We can agree on that, and also agree that MicroStrategy has done a really good job. And I do think what they have proven over the last 4 years in the equities markets with their Bitcoin strategy and the fact that they have successfully increased Bitcoin per share for MicroStrategy shareholders is innovative. It's something that people will catch on to. And as Bitcoin becomes the unit of account, that will be a KPI, a leading KPI that people really pay attention to. So on that side of the things, they've done an incredible job. What they talked about, again, I haven't listened to the podcast, but from what you described and what I've seen people screeching about on Twitter, like the increasing that yield by going out and taking risk with the Bitcoin on the balance sheet, I don't think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think in the future, like the way you increase Bitcoin per share is like going to be running an increasingly profitable business.
Yes, cash flows, Bitcoin.
Stats flow positive business. In the short term, like Saylor figured out that he could basically use the fiat system against itself and supercharge that. And the key here, if I were to be giving him advice, the key here would be to not get too greedy with it, that he found himself in the right moment at the right time, and not try to turn the lever to 15 or 20 when he's already at 12, you know?
Yeah, you've got more than 1% of the supply, bro.
Like that will not last forever. Under a Bitcoin standard, you can't play all these games to like increase Bitcoin per share. You're going to have to just run like a good old fashioned profitable business.
Yeah, but there is going to be this ARB in the meantime. And he's admitted explicitly, like this company was going to fucking fail unless I did something.
He crushed it on that regard.
Yeah. Oh, we got to get the boost. That's what I had. We got onto this. Top 4 boosts from Rabbit Hole Recap 322. Bitcoin Mining Mayhem.
Nice.
Top boosts, Pringle Stacks, 99,999 sats, 9s across the board. Palindrome boost. Kids are just the best, especially when they go all ninja on you and start conversing. Too cute. The reason why we do what we do is for the kids. Stay humble. Stack sats. Final thought, we will win. Love you both.
Great
Love
advice.
You, Pringle Stacks. Thank you. At Eric99, 50,000 sats. Stay humble. Stack sats. This is an NPub.
Great advice.
3762D3159BFD ... No update this week about your ongoing mempool bet, but I made a tracker under a side project, Alfred Integer, with you both sampled in it to mark the occasion this past year on Wave Lake. There's a link to the Wave Lake track in there. Stay humble and stack sats.
Great advice. I'm still
at null. At null is his
and
how long do we have on this bet?
A leap year next halving. Okay. It's gonna be a long time, but we have a closer bet coming up, which is whether or not the election happens or not. Don't forget about that bet, since we are a politics podcast now. Marty stated that the election was not going to happen.
I stated there was a 10% chance. That's why it's 10% odds, or 10 to 1 odds.
And we bet. What did we bet?
100,000 sats. You get 100.
So
I get
a
$1 million.
Sats.
Yeah.
If the election doesn't happen.
Yeah. And guess what? The odds went up to 20%.
Yeah. Do you want to? You want to double down or?
No, I'm good. I'm happy with. I bought low. I bought the bet low.
I mean, I would give you the same odds.
No, I'm good.
We could do 200,000, 2 million if you believe that it went up.
I mean, my split of last week's RHR is around like 150,000 sats, so could cover this bet.
Gimme.
Does it? The bet is it doesn't happen on November 5th, the first Tuesday in November, right?
No, the bet is that the election is. I say the election is going to happen. You say the election's not going to happen. It's not whether it was rigged or anything else. It was there an election or was there not an election?
Okay. Double it.
You're doubling it. Okay.
Double it.
Let the record show 200,000 sats. Marty owes me November 6th.
At 8 Myth Randier, 17,777 sats. I remember Odell once saying he's only doing this until someone else picks up the mantle. Not that I want you to stop, but you got to appreciate Max Bit by Bits Pod. He's giving you a run for your money now. Be ungovernable. Hashtag be ungovernable. Hashtag ungovernable Misfits. Max has been around for a while.
Yeah, but they increased their rate, him and Q&A, from monthly to bi-weekly, every 2 weeks. Bi-weekly means twice a week and every 2 weeks, but they're doing it every 2 weeks now. Yeah, I mean, I think they have a great podcast, and everyone should consider listening to it.
Yeah, we're big fans of Max and Q&A.
I challenged them to do a live unedited show every week.
Can you handle the heat? Are you that ungovernable?
But besides, that's a Bitcoin podcast. This is a politics podcast now.
Duh. Come on, guys. Politics podcast, but we wade into software updates every once in a while, and that's the part of the show we find ourselves in now. Sparrow Wallet version 2.0.0 has been released with SLIP 39 shares recovery, new hardware wallets, and more. It's a major upgrade. Version 2 officially here.
Huge. Thank you, Craig. We appreciate you. One man machine. Yeah, I mean, Sparrow's awesome. It's the perfect example of how much a single individual can change the world. Like, my livelihood is so much better off because of Sparrow. So Thank you.
Thank you. Next up on the update list, Cold Card MK4 version 5.4 and Q version 1.3 have been released. Zor from Seed Vault, optimizations, and more.
So my favorite update on this is I think XOR is a great feature that the Cold Card has inherently, which is like it's like it gives you a lot of the benefits of multisig, while remaining incredibly simple and robust. So effectively, you have multiple secrets, and if you bring them all together, then you are able to recover your funds. Instead of having like a single seed plate, you could have 2 seed plates or 3 seed plates. And I think that's anyone who's doing single sig and is scared of multi-sig. I mean, first of all, I think you should consider multi-sig, but Seed XOR is a really nice middle ground. And they upped the functionality there, where one of the biggest negatives was with multi-sig, you can go to like your different locations and you can sign it individually with the PSBT. And now they brought similar functionality to XOR within the firmware. So that's really great to see.
Shout out to the Cold Card team. Next up, we have Liana version 7.0, Liana Connect, Electrum support, and more.
Yeah, I mean, Liana is like leading the way on Miniscript. Yeah, and I will say, last time I tested it, I got scared the shit out of me, and I thought I lost a bunch of money, which I didn't. Recovered, but use caution. Still, I mean, great wallet, great team, and it's cool seeing them push the ball forward. I do see Bitcoin Bandit in the comments. I mean, while we're shilling podcasts, Rick Rubin recently had Jack Mallers on his podcast, Tetragrammaton, and that was a great listen. Tetragrammaton is the name of the podcast. So search that.
He orange pilled. Rick Rubin.
Yeah, I mean, apparently, like, him and Jack are very close friends. Him and Dorsey are very close friends. So I question what Dorsey's been doing this whole time. If it took Mallers to orange pill him, but
maybe he trusted the younger generation. You know.
Yeah, love to see it.
Love to see it. Next up, we have RoboSats version 0.7.0 alpha with a desktop app, Nostr order book, and more. That's pretty massive, Nostr order book.
It's really cool there. So RoboSats is a great way to buy Bitcoin without giving personal identifiable information or sell Bitcoin. It's peer-to-peer. So there's 2 parties to each trade, obviously. And RoboSats makes it very easy to do. Obviously, in the beginning, they started very centralized. or maybe not obvious to people. They started very centralized. First, they started federating out their system to try and reduce single points of failure. And now they've added a Nostr order book. So it's easier to implement orders across different instances, which is incredibly important because you don't want to cut the liquidity, right? Liquidity is already the amount of sellers or buyers is already much less than the KYC'd surveilled alternatives, and you don't want to cut that liquidity. So Nostr is a perfect use case for this, and it's really great to see them push this out.
Shout out to RoboSats. Next up, we got LNbits version 0.12.11, which has been released with fixes, refactors, UI improvements, and new funding sources. Blue Wallet version 7.0.4 has been released with advanced mode unleashed. Check out Blue Wallet. Blue Wallet making a comeback. Not that it went anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, they had like the dark period of the custodial Lightning wallet and then removing the custodial Lightning wallet. But on the on-chain side, I mean, there unfortunately just aren't many solid options on the on-chain self-custody Bitcoin first ecosystem on mobile. And Blue Wallet has been leading that pack for a long time now, particularly because it's cross-platform on both iOS and in Android. I mean, look, my dream is, and desktop. I mean, I think the majority of their users are probably mobile though. My dream is like, we need like a Sparrow type wallet that is mobile first, and it's not going to be Craig that does it. So someone else has to do it.
If not you, then who, freaks? Sparrow for mobile. Get on it.
You heard it here first, freaks. Marty's going to release it
tomorrow. Dana Wallet has been released. It's a mobile silent payments wallet for Bitcoin donations. It's cool to see. First public release of Dana Wallet. Simple silent payment native Bitcoin wallet available on Android.
Yeah, this is very early. Don't use it with large amounts of funds.
They strongly recommend against using mainnet unless you are willing to accept the risk of losing your funds. So beware.
Yeah, there you go.
Blitz Wallet version 0.2.7. That's Blitz, BLITZ.
It's so fucking confusing.
I know.
Sorry, continue.
Blixed, Blitz.
Bolts.
Blix
is a different wallet, just to be clear. And Bolts is a swap service. And they're all Lightning.
But now Blitz has eCash integrated.
There's Blink by the Gloy guys.
Yeah.
I mean, the Breeze is a little bit farther away in terms of naming collisions, but confusing, guys. Whoever came up with Blitz, maybe come up with another name.
Well, Oliver Koblasek from Blitz. Blitz is using eCash for micropayments, so any amount under 1,000 sats, it's eCash over Liquid, and after 100,000 sats, you get your own Lightning channel, become 100% non-custodial. In other words, you can now use Blitz to zap people on Nostr instantly and not wait to open a channel. So eCash being a bridge.
We've talked about this at length, this idea of using eCash. And this is what Mutiny was doing until they pivoted to non-Bitcoin stuff. But this idea of using eCash as like this bridge until you hit a certain threshold where then you could take proper self-custody. And I really like that. And I like the idea that eCash is protocolized custodians and that you could have competition there, and that the actual wallet provider doesn't have to run the mint, doesn't have to run the custodian, and you can have the user just choose which eCash mint they're using. Is novel and interesting and has its use cases.
Sorry, I have a call at the top.
This is also very early, so don't use it with large amounts, please.
Yeah. Sorry, I was sending an email, pushing a call because this episode is fire right now. We got to keep going. Do you know if they're using Cashew? I assume they are.
Yeah,
they spin their own.
If they're using eCash, they're using Cashew.
Yeah, assume they were. Nothing in the write-up though. Keeper desktop version 0.1.1 has been released with cross-platform support. This is cool to see. These guys have been around for a while. What was their name before this?
Hexawallet.
Hexawallet, yeah.
Unrelated to the Hex shitcoin.
Very unrelated. Amethyst version 0.91.0 has been released with edge-to-edge feeds.
I mean, if you have an Android phone, like, you should be using Amethyst.
Yes.
Great. I mean, Vidar is a fucking legend. The dude just constantly ships to a fault sometimes. But I'm just very glad we have him working on Nostr.
Yeah. Vitter posted on Nostr, slowly becoming a real app. A few more rewrites, and we can start thinking about version 1.0. There we go. Shout out to the Amethyst team. KeyChat app version 1.19.7 has been released with NSEC login and Medium groups.
So this is trying to tackle encrypted group messaging. Very, very early. This might be their first public release, despite the
version being very high.
Version numbers seem like it's not. So yeah, I think it's important to cover it on the show that it exists, but I would not test it with my own NPub, to be clear. Test it with the throwaway NPub. It's very easy to create new Nostr keys.
Spin up an ephemeral key for
one of their big things is, which I think is kind of cool, is using Cashew, using eCash to combat spam. So basically, like, using Cashew as a stamping, like a stamp, like a mail stamp. It's kind of cool. I mean, Nostr right now, if you're using Nostr, like, we're fighting our first spam war. There will be many. And there will be many different techniques being used to combat spam, such as Web of Trust, such as micropayments, such as proof of work, and many different combinations of those, and other things that maybe we haven't thought about. But because Nostr is an open protocol, because no one controls it, there will be bumps along the road where we're like, iron sharpens iron, and we like figure shit out. But we will figure it out.
Slowly but surely, one app at a time, one test at a time. Spin up those ephemeral keys, test it out, give them some feedback. That is it for the software updates. We're on to the last three topics of the show, and I do have a clip I want to end it on. R21 Shares ETF diversifies Bitcoin custodians with Anchorage Digital and BitGo. This is great to see. We've talked a lot about.
They're not the first one to do it, but this should be the standard. I will say that the standard should actually be multi-sig.
Agreed. Multi-institution.
These ETFs are basically doing like the Titanic approach, where like it's different.
You siphon off levels of risk.
Yeah, they like split it. So like if they get rugged by one custodian, they only lose like 30% or 20% or whatever there, which is strictly inferior to multi-sig. So hopefully they get there. But in the meantime, they're basically just taking different baskets of their reserves and putting them in different regulated custodians.
Yeah. Should create a multi-institution, multi-sig quorum. Each custodian that they're partnering with has single points of failure. Each individually is a single point of failure. Multi-sig, multi-institution.
Yeah, or I mean, roll your own, like Fidelity did.
Fidelity did.
Presumably, Fidelity is using multi-sig cold storage in-house.
Square's open source their cold storage solution. You can pull that off the shelf if you want to.
I mean, Strike owns their own infrastructure. River owns their own infrastructure. Coinbase, who is, a massive single point of failure for a lot of people, isn't trusting third parties themselves. They've also rolled their own. Binance has rolled their own. Like, that used to be the standard. You used to not just outsource the hardest part about running a Bitcoin business to someone else.
And you mentioned it,
and
you don't have it on the list. River, they rolled their own. They also released proof of reserves yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's good to see. What is your opinion on that?
I think. I mean, I tested it out. I think they have their assets and their liabilities. It's hard to prove River's liabilities.
That's the problem.
Yeah, but
I think it's still obviously a step in the right direction. I mean, I think it should be the standard. It should be what users expect. But like you just can't prove total liabilities, particularly non-Bitcoin liabilities is even harder to prove. And so like the real proof of reserves is just taking self-custody. Like you should always just take self-custody.
But this is definitely a step in the right direction from transparency from exchanges.
I think they should all be doing this. But I think it's also important and I think River did a decent job like explaining this in their release, that it's not,
foolproof.
This is not a replacement for self-custody. Like you should, it has its faults. Once again, you just straight up can't prove liabilities.
Yeah.
So
next on the list,
and specifically, I think Marty's favorite, Brian Armstrong from Coinbase, like last week or a couple days earlier, said like they're not going to.
He just like hand waved it away. It's like, oh, you want our wrapped Bitcoin?
Like fuck you. We're at Coinbase.
Our wrapped base Bitcoin? No, you're not going to. No, you have to trust us.
It's part of the trust model. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to trust us. I'm Baldilox.
Just take self-custody, guys. It doesn't matter like what your favorite influencer says about who they trust or who they don't. I hope FTX proved this. Like just take self-custody. It's easier than you think it is if you're overwhelmed. Dip your toe in, take a little bit off, get comfortable, send a transaction, receive a transaction, restore your wallet, get comfortable, and then get everything to fuck off ASAP. Trust a third party security holder.
I mean, Coinbase, you can't send Bitcoin to Coinbase Commerce. They're making it hard to spend Bitcoin and receive Bitcoin. Who's to say they won't make it hard to move Bitcoin off their exchange at some point down the line? You should get it off. Next up on the list, 10-10-1 to wind down operations by November 3rd. I thought we talked about this already.
I don't think we did. I think we talked about this privately. But yeah, 10-10-1. Yeah. And I also have, what's the other one? Nayuta wallet are both shutting down operations. I think this is just
timing.
It's just another example of how hard it is it's hard to run a business period. It's hard to build a business period. It's even harder to build a freedom-focused, sovereignty-focused, sustainable business. And I mean, that's why like the quiet thing that most people just don't say out loud is like the businesses that are most successful in this ecosystem right now are just like the straight up KYC regulated exchanges that charge a fee for Bitcoin buy sell. I'm by far not an easy business to run, but it's the easiest to be profitable and sustainable compared to everything else in the Bitcoin ecosystem. So, I mean, just huge shout out to like the founders and the open source contributors trying to build projects and products that are freedom focused, because that is just incredibly difficult.
Not easy. Very hard. So what's going to take? People trying?
I mean, and to the comments, I mean, I think this is one of the reasons why OpenSats is so important at this part of the adoption cycle. Because it does give people at least some level of financial security while they're trying to build these things out, where it's yet to be seen if they will actually be profitable and sustainable long term.
Yeah, agreed. Shout out to OpenSats. And hey, if you start something, you have to wind it down. Don't beat yourself up. We talk about this a lot. At 1031, timing's everything, and there's a ton of cool stuff that you can do with the protocol stack and the developer stack being built, developer library stack being built on top of Bitcoin. And we can do some pretty sci-fi stuff now, but a lot of times the market just isn't there yet, simply. Even though it can be used, the user base isn't there. And so being aware of that as you're building is something that you should really think about. And on that note, as you can see here, we still have on the screen the No Bullshit Bitcoin. I've had so many of their links open as we're going through the list and reading news stories, software updates. Go donate to No Bullshit Bitcoin. Just donate $50 via Geyser.
Yeah, they do great work. They try not to do advertisements or any of the other or paywalls, and they're completely donation funded, and they really just don't get much in donations. So a little bit goes a long way.
It does. Go check them out. This has been a great rip. I do have some levity to end it on.
Nice. What do we?
Well, we've got something serious and then levity. Because I think the people
rugged.
The people that lug. This is a clip of a New York City public health official during COVID admitting that he was having underground sex parties while he was locking down individuals and forcing small businesses to be shuttered. You don't have to play the clip. Matt
this is what's his face, right?
Dr. J Varma, play it. He's a degenerate.
No, the guy who records them. What's his name?
No, this wasn't James O'Keefe. This is different.
It looks like it.
It does, yeah. He set forth a model. He taught people if you just go on Tinder and catch these horny dudes, they will, and you pretend like you're a hot chick or a gay dude that wants to bang them, they will tell you everything that they know about the corruption in their jobs.
I actually was the one who convinced the mayor to make it a mandate.
Like, New York City found out that you were having sex parties during COVID?
Yeah, it would have been a big deal. Yeah, it would have been a real bad. We went to some like underground dance party underneath a bank in Wall Street, and we were all rolling, we were all taking Molly, and everybody's high.
Pause.
And I was so happy.
All rolling, all taking Molly, all high, having sex at a bank, underground bank in Fidei, and we locked you down. Force you to get vaccinated, force you to shut down your business, force you to mask your kids, force you to hate your family because we created all this strife. And this guy's bragging about it to a Tinder date. Dr. J Varma. These people should be in.
Not actually elected official, right?
Former senior advisor to public health. He says it later. We don't have to watch the whole thing, but he was giving press conferences telling people stay indoors, 6 feet, mask up. Stay home from work, and he was
hypocrisy, man.
Yeah, these people should be in jail.
I agree. I mean, if you remember, it was illegal at one point to have more than 10 people in your apartment.
Yeah.
In New York, which a lot of people rightfully disobeyed. But that, talk about something that got memory hold. That whole, I think our country deserved a nationwide therapy debrief session after that. We
deserve a tribunal. These people need to.
That could be part of the therapy session, Mark.
They ruined a lot of lives. No. Talking about orgies, Black Epstein. They got him. They got him, dude.
You see, Ivan, before we get there, Ivan in the comments, just all caps, balls deep is not proper social distancing. They got Diddy?
They got Diddy. They got him.
Wow. Is this the levity part?
No, the levity part is the last
I feel
thing.
Like that's pretty, that's just fucked up.
Very fucked up. I feel bad for Meek Mill. Meek Mill is a little butt boy.
Was that true?
That's what people are. Yeah, people think Meek Mill was.
Where did they get? So what's the breakdown on Diddy? Where'd they get him?
Sex trafficking.
No, where?
Narcotics. New York, Southern District.
Black Epstein covers all of that, Marty. We understand what he did.
They got him in New York.
What? How did they get him in? Why was he in New York? What the situation?
I thought it looks like he thought he was scot-free.
Oh.
And there's been a coincidental high amount of executives leaving music industry businesses. I believe Universal CEO stepped down, Sony.
Doesn't Harvey
CEO
Weinstein have another case too? I think
that's like a, what's it called? An appeal or a.
Okay, let's go to the levity.
Levity. This is hilarious. Play the clip and then show the quoted tweet.
And by the way, I've never once spoken to the chairman of the Fed since I became president.
Chairman of the Fed since he became president, for those who couldn't hear it. And here's a picture of those two sitting in the Oval Office talking to each other.
Is that what he meant, though?
Yeah.
I mean, who even knows if he knows what he's talking about? But yeah, I mean, he clearly doesn't.
No, that was the levity.
I heard Chairman Zinn, or I thought he was just mispronouncing. I don't
G?
know. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I didn't know he was still giving press conferences. Is that a new one?
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
I
he's
thought-
technically still
I thought
president.
they-
It's a real. He has the.
I didn't
People
think he was.
talk about being memorial, and I think people have forgotten that Joe Biden's our president still.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of.
It's like he's technically still president. Nobody cares. It is crazy. Again, we said it last week.
Okay,
news
well,
cycle.
I feel like that wasn't levity. That was just sad.
Do you have any levity?
I was promised levity. I mean, love your family. Focus on what's important.
It's true. It's true. It was Fire Marshal Day for the boys. They got to meet the Fire Marshal.
That's fun.
Get to the fire. Has some
They're
levity.
one of the best government agencies. Like, no one hates the fire department.
You can't hate the fire department.
Yeah.
You can't hate them.
I mean, it's not really levity, but freaks. Dryers catch on fire a lot. So, like, don't run a dryer when you're out of the house or if you're sleeping. It's a bad idea.
Make sure you clear it.
You should have fire extinguishers around the laundry room.
Are you speaking from
and this
experience right now, or are you just very worried about
This
the
is
freaks?
just something I didn't know. Be aware. It's important to prepare on that front. And I mean, this is, by the way, just for Americans only, because the rest of the world doesn't use a dryer, basically. That's our American privilege. We're just using a shit ton of fucking energy to dry our clothes when you can just hang them up. But
why would you do that?
I mean, that's still to this day is like my favorite stat against Bitcoin mining being an energy hog is that just dryers in America.
Well, that was the, I'm not sure if you saw it, but there was a headline out of France this week that prices for their electricity went negative because they had an overabundance. And I just tweeted, like, Bitcoin mining fixes this. If you have a grid system where prices are going negative, your utilities companies and your power facilities are eating that cost, which puts the long-term viability of those businesses in question. You want to make sure they have revenue. Bitcoin mining fixes that, but hilarious response to that tweet was, this is before we even get to Bitcoin mining fixing this, like, air conditioning fixes this. Just buy some air conditioners, plug them in. You won't have negative.
I've been fact checked in the comments that everyone in Switzerland uses dryers. Yeah, I'm sure my comment that the only people that use clothes dryers is Americans is completely wrong. But we do heavily dominate those stats.
Yeah.
And oftentimes when I travel, there's just no dryers, and I'm cool with that. We actually, my family, we hang a lot of our clothes. It works, and the clothes last longer.
It works.
That's how I'm able to get away with wearing 3 shirts that you freaks have been politely bullying me about.
Simplicity, you know? I mean, yeah, humans dried their clothes that way for thousands of years.
I mean, he was in the shower for a while. I'm a pro shower guy.
I think you should shower too.
It's my happy place.
Yeah.
It's like a meditation.
It is. Get lost in the shower. Okay, we're gonna end
Besides
it
the cleanliness aspects. Stay humble, stack sats. Love you, freaks.